wad of gum off of the floor here, or you might be stuck in one place. I don't know where it came from. Who's chewing gum in this? I thought we had a no gum chewing rule in this school, but all of a sudden I found out I couldn't hardly get off of the deck. It was under there? Oh, well, sometimes as I say, yeah. Now, how about working on the heel of that shoe for a while? Again, tonight there'll be a social hour with a little punch and cookies outside, and then you can stay outside, inside, or you can go out and dance with the group. That's a voluntary thing. Or you can come in here and we'll run one of the videos again, or run some more of that if those that want to do that, those who want to go through the exhibits, talk to the people that you've heard tonight. You can do anything you want, as long as you want. Last man out, lock the door. Or woman, as the case may be. Sharry Edwards has been with us now. This is her 4th time with us. She is a talented, gifted lady in the area of sound and sensitivity and a number of other areas. I picked the title for her talk on the program from a book of hers called The Making of a Soul, although we could have called it also Scientific Sensitivity. She comes from Athens, Ohio, Albany, Ohio, one of those towns. Here it says Albany. Anyway, you teach at Athens. Is at the university there? No? In Virginia. She teaches at a university in Virginia. Try to get this straight, you folks. Well, anyway, she has a master's degree in education. She has uncovered some very exciting things in these areas of sound, sensitivity, telepathy, and a whole number of other things. Ruth Montgomery said of her, and I want to read it to be exact, she is quoted as saying that her work may be the Rosetta Stone of understanding metaphysics. We're glad to present to you folks tonight Sharry Edwards, Albany, Ohio.
I'll not stay up here unless you guys make me. I'll walk all over the floor. But they'd like me to stay up here for the camera, but it's not in my nature to stand in one spot, ever. I was so excited when I found out what my topic was. I didn't know till about 2 weeks ago. I never know what's going to happen. And then laid on me was a tremendously exciting piece of information that brings psychic and science together. Last year in Denver, when I was with people said to me, so much of what you do is scientific. You aren't going to be with us very long. Because as you know, if you're a metaphysician or a psychic, once something becomes real and science, they claim it, and we don't get it anymore, correct? It happened to lots of us. And that really worried me, that how I could bridge that gap. I term the New Age, or define the New Age, as what's on the board here, that which is the forefront of change. I like that definition, and it's not opposed to science, but is part of science, and science is that which substantiates change. And I wanted to bring those two things together because I'm a scientist. And that's because I was too scared to be a psychic. I knew what was happening to me was real. My family certainly had enough fits about it. I used to go to family reunions, and they'd do. I could not tell the difference when you thought something or you really said it. And it still aggravates my husband when I'll hand him something before he asks. But he's gotten kind of used to it after 20-some years. But I could not deal with people thinking that I was weird and awful and schizophrenic and I needed to be on a tranquilizer, when I finally realized all they were was scared of me because I was invading their privacy. They didn't tell me that. As a child, it was very traumatic. So as I grew up, I decided to be a scientist and prove that I was sane, which is one of the stupidest things I could have done. And as I went through all of the things about psychic ability and proved that they were real, in 1982, we proved that auras were real. Nobody's heard about that, right? Or very few of you? There is now scientific validation. We invented something called aura cards. Almost anybody can see an aura that wants to. We broke the sound barriers of healing with sound and frequency. We now know how that works, and we have 3 years of data to show that we actually broke the codes and we can abate disease with sound. We went on to find out why people are psychic. Some of you can be psychic from diet. Some of you are psychic from brain dominance. And we can tell that, and we can tell how your psychic ability works, and we can get rid of it if you want, or we can enhance it if you'd like. We went on to prove that through your voice. Have you ever gone to a psychic and they say, talk to me? And from your voice, they tell what's going on in your life. Well, we have a little machine. I have it back here. From a voice analysis, we can now tell what's going on in your body within about 4 years before it happens. We can tell what's going on in your environment, what's happening with your emotions, what's happening with your diet, all from a little box. And since it's a piece of equipment that is regulated and somebody accepted it, that little box is now psychic, and it's science, so it's real. Is that dumb? I think it's extremely dumb on the part of scientists, but they're scared. Just like my parents, my relatives were scared that they didn't know what to believe because there was no proof except in our hearts and our minds. We couldn't show it to them with valid scientific information. We know we're valid in this room, right? We know what we're doing is a good thing, but they don't. I don't have to stand up here and say, I proved such and such, and have you guys look at it like I'm some great person, because you already knew you were real. The only thing that I'm going to hand to you this evening is a way to bridge psychic and science. Because we took the last step, we now can prove that the orbits of the planets affect brain waves. Astrology, which I never believed in before, can now be shown to have some scientific basis. And that doesn't mean that that's great and wonderful and astrology's wild and scientific. I mean, that piece of it doesn't mean much to me. And I'm sorry if I'm insulting any astrologists out there. But what I'm excited about is that everybody who said we're nuts, that you read this column in the paper, everybody who said that psychic ability is not valid, and astrology is probably one of the oldest psychic sciences in the world outside of mediumship, it now shows that what we believed in our hearts and by faith has a scientific reality. So big deal, right? Anybody interested in hearing how this happens? Can you put up that first transparency here? We have to dim the light so this will show on the camera. This is exciting to me because it will bring the realm of psychic ability into science. And as Dean can tell you, and many of you who have been with me in the last few years, I always try to bring in new words. Are you guys using extrusional from last year? Anybody? No? All right. I'll explain that one. Extraordinary means that you're extraordinary, and I thought we're extra unusual, so why not be extrusional? I kind of like the word, right? So I brought you a new word this year. Can you turn the board over with this new word? This is how I describe what I do. We've also proven that palmistry is a science, and it's now taught in universities. Psychotypics, P-S-Y-C-H-I-T-I-F-I-C-S, psychotypics, that which bridges the gap between psychic and science. And that's so they can't steal it anymore. We have our own word, our own term, our own field, right? Go spread the word. When we first started these research projects, when we first started dealing with the aura, it happened because I have high-frequency hearing. I have hearing beyond a dog's hearing. I'm a mutant. My voice is also mutated. I can produce pure tones with my voice. And nobody could understand how I could do that because it was against every textbook that had ever been written. People cannot hear at the range that I do. So they better rewrite their textbooks or I'm not from here. And you guys can take your choice of what you'd like to believe. When we did this research project, we found out that you emit a sound and you emit a sound, and they're all different. And from that sound, we could tell what you were thinking. That means that privacy is really an illusion and we're just polite people out here not dealing with it. When we used a musical, I can't tell which one is not covered up here. Here. When we used a frequency, when I reproduced a pure tone, we knew from the sound that you were emitting what sounds to give you back to decrease your blood pressure to the point that you could pass out. Is that a powerful tool? To heal or to kill, either one, right? If you take a tuning fork, can't hear that, can you? You can hear a little bit? This vibrates at 440 cycles a second. That vibration produces the note of A. We found out that it also has a corresponding interpretation, just the note of A. It meant a mental and physical balance. We could put you in a room and find out what sound you were emitting and tell pretty nearly what was going on with you. Now, we could tell that you were satisfied. We couldn't tell what about. Or we could tell that you were studying or very intellectual, but really not what it was about. One of the things that I found tremendously interesting, I see somebody furiously writing up here on the front line, there are copies of this. What we found out, tremendously interesting to me, was that we could also tell your astrology sign in about 40% of the cases. And I thought, I don't believe in astrology. This can't happen. In 40% of the cases, exactly, we could tell. And by the percentage of the note, we could tell if you were a late or an early Capricorn. This went against everything that I had ever thought about metaphysics or being a scientist. 40% of the time, it would match the opposite. So if you were the note of A here, we would, what's the opposite of A? Let me look at my other chart. Cancer, you'd end up being a Cancer. So now we got 80% of the time, and I started looking at that, why people were 40% of the time an exact opposite. And we found out that those of you who are right-brained were the opposite of your sign. And we used that information with some of the sound research we were doing, and we got tremendously better results. So any of you out there who are using color or frequency therapy, that's an extremely valuable point to get more consistent results with the people you're working with. That turned around several projects that we were doing with the government. We also found out that there was a corresponding color. And we found this out by taking the frequency of sound and multiplying it. 220, 440, 880, all of those are the notes of A. They're just in different octaves. And when you multiply this 42 times, you get up into the sight spectrum. And in the sight spectrum, this is a shade of orange. And everybody, or a lot of you know that if something vibrates at orange, it screens out everything but a shade of blue, and we see it. This man's shirt right here is not blue by vibration, it is orange. It just screens out everything but the blue that we see. This is what's left over. So any of you who are working with color healing and you have somebody who's a right-brained person, you need to use the opposite color on them. And that's extremely important. As we developed this chart, we also found out that the sound of your name or of any word that you speak also had a corresponding vibration to it. And for this particular one, the letters are CH, H, and S. We worked on this for years trying to find those letters and finally found a lady in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Shirley Kiley, I love her. She had already interpreted this straight out of Jewish mysticism. I had racked my brain for years trying to do this, and somebody already wrote it thousands of years ago. I figure somebody wrote everything that I'm doing. I just got chosen to remember it and pass it on. And some days I think, oh, what a debt I must have had to society. The complete chart of this looks like this. And I call that a color calm chart in dedication to my daughter. I could straighten it up, couldn't I? I did it the wrong way. I did this because we were teaching auras to nurses. We were teaching them to see, feel, and hear auras in emergency room situations. Because I had done this at the university, and they said, well, we might as well take advantage of it, so teach our nurses. I was swimming with my daughter, and she was moving out on a rope and fell 15 feet, 12 to 15 feet on her knees. And when she hit the water, it was about 3 inches deep, and she exploded her knee. And when I got to it, her leg was hanging off to one side, and the bone had popped. And I am terrible in an emergency, but it just went. It just clicked like this, and I shoved the bone back and put the leg back where it needed to be. It didn't fit well, but I put it back, tied a towel around it, and I thought, I'm going to watch my daughter die, because we were 45 minutes from help. And I thought, well, you dumb dits. You just taught nurses to control bleeding in an emergency room situation with sound and laying on of hands healing. Do this with your daughter. 45 minutes later, when the ambulance got there and they unwrapped her leg, she hadn't bled 2 teaspoons. I was amazed. The tear was so bad, her leg was so badly torn up that very large muscular men were throwing up from having to look at it as they were watching and gaping as the medics were there. I used the sound on her all the way to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, I had the thought, I don't need to do this anymore. And at that moment, she started screaming and bleeding profusely. I don't know if the sound helped her. I can't prove that it did, but I was determined from that point forward to find out what frequency actually did to people and how it was connected, because I used her sounds based on this chart. I knew that if I could save one other parent from having to watch their child die, then I had some valid reason to be on the planet. And we named this chart for her Color Com chart because after one of her surgeries, I was in her room trying to write an article about this for school, and she's totally out. And I thought, if I only had a name for this stuff, I could deal with it. I need a label. And here she is in a cast from her waist down, and she raises up with her eyes closed and does this. I think you ought to call it Color Com. I was in a state of shock, and she was out. So in honor of her, this is called a Color Com chart, because she believes that it saved her life. And I can't prove that in her particular case, but I can prove it in other cases that we worked with sound and how important this particular chart is. But what is important to you folks this evening is these sun signs. And if you don't know what is the opposite of your sun sign, for instance, red, it is the color red for Aries. The opposite of red is green, so we use the opposite of that as Virgo. So any of you who want to use this and don't know a whole lot about astrology, you can use it by its opposite. As I looked at this chart and I was trying to combine it with healing or abating disease, as I have to say in front of an audience, we would have somebody come into the lab, or I would go to where they were if they were extremely ill, and I would find out what their sound was. And we knew by feeding them back their sound that we were doing something, but we didn't know what it was. If somebody was, say, a Capricorn, we could feed them back this sound, and they would feel fine. But a particular disease that they had also had a particular sound. Most people who deal with frequency will tell you that emphysema is the note of E. Well, environmental emphysema is not the note of E, but genetic emphysema is around the note of E. As you can see here, the note of E is 164 cycles a second. Well, we found some people that were maybe 160 cycles a second, so we really didn't have a note that we could use on them. In one case that we were dealing with, the man's name was Frank Huber. And he did not believe in anything that I was doing, but his wife did. He had emphysema to the point where he was having wheezing attacks and couldn't breathe, and he would come staggering home. Have you ever seen anybody in an emphysema attack? It's kind of what it sounds like. And I made him a tape on normal iron oxide tape, and I made it in a musical note. What it would do for Frank would subside his emphysema attacks. We used it in the range of middle C in these frequencies, cycles per second. Move it over, all right. I decided to look and see what would happen if we changed these frequencies to a lower octave, if we just divided them in half. And you can notice here, this is the note of A that we looked at before, 440, 220, and on. Well, the more that we divided these just in half, the more results we got. And I couldn't figure that out, why lower octaves of sound would affect the body to have a quicker response. But we were getting down in this section where we couldn't put it on tape because you can't hear it. Then something phenomenal happened. As we divided these down, I began to recognize that the fourth division was almost exactly beta brainwaves for the human mind. I thought, oh, that's kind of a nice coincidence. I divided again. Alpha brainwave parameters. And I began to get suspicious that something was going on here, that I could go back to this color com chart and answer my question of why 40% of the time your sound matched your astrology sign. I took it down a step further, and it matched theta brainwaves, and I knew I had something on my hands here. The human brain answers a response to musical notes. How? How could that possibly happen that your brainwaves answer a response to music? It made no sense to me whatsoever. I started studying about what Hans Berger said with brainwaves. What he did was put a group of people in a room, and he hooked them up to electroencephalograms, and he had them do math problems, and in a math state, your brain waves went from here to here, you as a group. And these people over here, they put you in a state of meditation and prayer, and your brain waves went from here to here as a group. They clustered in these little parts. And this is how he came up with where brain waves are divided. And I thought, well, okay, that makes sense, but how does it pertain to music? And I went around trying to find out where music came from. Anybody know where we get our musical notes? Kepler and Kaiser did it. Can you erase that board? I want to draw this. It's exciting. To me, it's exciting. I hope I can spur you to be excited about this. The orbits of the planets and the formulas of the ratios of the planets is where we got our notes. C, D, E. Does that blow your mind? Did mine. I guess I'm easy to impress. Here's the sun. The elliptical orbits, although the planet's orbits change, the farthest and the most nearest part to the sun stay almost exact. So here's the first planet, and they said, well, that's the ratio of 1. Here's the second planet. That's the ratio of 9/8 to this ratio. The third one was 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, 5/3, and 15/8. And this, if you start with the notes of 440, this is the note of C, D, E, F, G, A, B. The planet's orbits affect your brainwaves. We just proved it. There's one problem with this idea. Delta actually has 2 octaves of sound. For normal brainwave patternization, 1 to 3 is delta. There's actually 2 octaves in there. And I started looking at this and I said, what would happen if we use these lower octaves that are non-sound? I say sub-audible sound, but that's kind of stupid because if it's sub-audible, it's not sound. So it's really sub-audible frequency. And I looked at this and started using sounds that were below normal hearing levels. In this alpha range, we found that we get an emotional response when we use frequencies in this range. When you use a beta range, you get a physiological response, a large motor response. In the theta range, we get a biochemical response. In the first delta range, here we go, folks. This ties in with everything anybody's said in this room in the past 3 days. Peter talked about it, Arlene talked about it, many of you. With delta, we got a bioelectric response. With what I call X here, and I don't even have a name for it, if any of you do, let me know. We got a biomagnetic response to the point that the body began to repattern itself after we gave you the sound that you had missing. You require this entire formula that the planets have put together as our macrocosm in your microcosm body. This is a substantiation for all the theory about that. This is a substantiation about natural healing, about psychic healing. These are the frequencies that you folk use. We stuck needles in you and found it out. When you lay hands on somebody, you are using these particular frequencies. You are repatterning the electrical and the magnetic body so that it in turn makes you a new piece of fiber, physical, whatever it is. It proves what Peter was saying about it's our mind that does it first. We were able to repattern the body of a man who had emphysema to the point that he's now out playing golf and playing in sawdust in his garage. I hear you, Bonnie. I'm going to do it anyway. Stand up. Bonnie, stand up here. This is Frank's wife, the man that we've been running this emphysema project on for about 3.5 to 4 years, right? Will you quickly describe his physical condition before and now? And hold the mic to her. Okay. I didn't tell her I was going to do this.
Never does. I have a big voice. His condition before was, in a word, terrible. He couldn't sleep at night unless he was sleeping in a 45-degree angle. It would take him a half hour to dress in the morning. It would take him about 20 minutes to walk to the table to eat, and then rest most of the day. That is basically what he was like before we brought Sharry into his life, and with the testing that Sharry did for him. Let's bring it up to date. Today he plays golf at least 3 times a week. Don't plan anything for Saturday and Sunday. Those are his golf days for sure. He's busy in the wood workshop playing with all kinds of saws and sanders and sawdust, and he's done some nice inventions of his own out there to gather the sawdust so it doesn't fly everywhere. He's having a picnic, folks, and he mows the lawn. He has wonderful energy. He sleeps all night. He eats well. He looks great, and he loves me greatly.
I won't comment on that, Bonnie. Would you comment on the fact that his last x-rays showed less congestion and garbage and scarring in his lungs?
Yes, I witnessed the last x-rays, and they're clear. I looked very diligently for scar tissue. In fact, I asked the doctor to explain the lung x-rays, and he said, well, they're fine. In fact, about a week ago, we went to see the doctor again, and he signed Frank's golf permit so that he can run a golf cart if he wants. He walks, but once in a while, if it's raining, he likes to use a golf cart, and they have to sign it so that he can run it all over the golf course.
It's great. It indicates that those sounds that you have missing from your body are required for you to be healthy. Boy, that's going to be hard getting on camera, isn't it? It's because that pattern is universal for our particular solar system, and that each of you require a full octave of sound in your voice before you're perfectly at ease with being on this planet. What is the implications of that? I think this bridges the gap between psychic and science, because we were saying all along it's only frequency, right? How many people did you hear say that? It's only cycles per second of frequency. That's all sound is, that's all vision is, that's what psychic healing is, and we just broke the codes of that. Psychic means knowing you know something and not knowing how you know. We know how you know now, so it's not psychic anymore, it's psychotypic. And I love it. And next time somebody calls you weird for believing in this kind of stuff, we're going to say thank you and go on. Even if it's the point of schizophrenic, we're going to say, well, thank you, I really appreciate this, because we have the secrets. And now there's a way to show the scientific field that it's valid. And we never needed it. It was in our heart anyway. But what we needed was a way to give them enough courage to talk to us so that their colleagues didn't think we were a little off. And now that we can show it scientifically, they'll have that courage to come to us for the beginning. New Age people are the forefront of change. We're the people who usually do it first. because we have the courage to be different and do it first. The other, I think, extremely significant part of showing that human brainwaves affect the pattern or are the pattern of their solar system, if we can crack this one, and this is my next stage, we can take any solar system and tell what the brainwaves are going to be like and maybe depict what that life form is going to be in that solar system. Isn't that exciting? This gives me rushes up here, and I already know about it. I would like to open the floor to questions about what's going on here. I have no idea how much time is left. I haven't paid attention to a thing here. Is anybody else?
30 minutes,
A whole 30 minutes? In my life, I finished early? 18 minutes? Do you know why Dean put me last? He put me last in the day because he knows that I always go over. Now look what I've done to this man. I finished early. You had a question first. On Mm-hmm. Okay, she says, on the chart, some of them didn't have a corresponding color and a follow-through. The way you do this is take green and blue and mix it together because these notes that go here are halfway in between these two. So you simply mix it, and you have to mix it here also. Know that these are pigment colors. They're not light colors. So those of you who are real in tune to light, you would use the opposite of these. My aura is yellow, but I am right-brained, so I use a lot of this purple pink that is the opposite. And I also use these very opposite colors to produce a sound for the audience, so that there's part of you that are left brain that are getting the sound of my colors, and part of you are right brain getting the sound of my colors, and I get 80% of the audience believing in what I say. And I also use my voice. I'll use my voice very softly for some of you, and then I'll use a strong voice. And we actually teach this in a class for politicians on how to affect an audience with your voice. And it's very reliable, and you folks never know it's happened. And it works. This is a tremendously manipulative tool. We can make people throw up. I was going to tell you about some of the grosser things we've done. What? Yes, we've never done that one, but we made people sorely agitated. We made people's muscles sore. We made people amorous. That was an accident. But don't think I didn't take advantage of it at home. We made people hungry. We could make you in a state of meditation. We can put people out. I can see this as an alternative to anesthetic. To anybody who's ever had stomach surgery, you have to get up and they make you cough, you know, right after you had your stomach split open, and it's not pleasant. And so this would be a nice anesthetic, I think, if we could ever get it to the point where I had any time to do it at all. I am pulled in many different directions all at once because I work with so many things, from sound to astrology to palmistry, to learning modalities, to why people are psychic. You know, anybody notice I have a can of Pepsi up here? Well, anybody care that I had a can of Pepsi up here? Did you sit here and judge me because I had a can of Pepsi up here? Yes? And Pepper, I liked your name too, and you're going to judge me? We found out that psychics have enzymes missing from their stomach to digest meats. You ever wonder why so many of us are vegetarians? And this is a Band-Aid approach, but carbonization will help you digest fats and meats. You really need to get the enzymes put back. That's the proper way. But a lot of us are addicted to the carbonation in pop. And so we drink it and then we feel guilty about it. And that's worse than not having it at all. So this is one of the things we found out about the psychic diet. We also found out you guys have extremely narrow tolerance levels to anything, including your environment, your husband, your synthetic clothes, on and on and on and on. So all of these things that I'm into all at once, I don't have time. But if any of you want to join what we're doing and be another mind and help feed this project, I'd love it. Back here. Question.
And the other thing is, how do you find the sound?
How do you find the sound?
How do we find the sound? How do you find it?
Okay, I didn't finish the story about the Kabbalah. I thought I did. And how do we find out your own sound? Okay. About the Kabbalah, Shirley Kiley is the one that translated all this, and she simply found there are certain astrology signs that have letters that correspond to the emotional content assigned to that astrology sign. I didn't give you all of them because it's not original research with me. And you can get in touch with Shirley Kiley in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I don't know her phone number, but don't call her before 11 at night. She is a night person. And she can finish the story because it's hers. I do have a listing at my table back here that any of you can come and take a look at to see if your sun sign matches, or if it doesn't, it probably matches somebody very significant to you. Now, how do you find your own sound? There are two ways to find your sound. One is from your voice, and that's the easiest way for you folks to do it. We do it with this little machine, and this is nothing more than a piano tuner that you can buy at any good musical store. This is a Boss one, and you have to hook up a mic to it. I like the Korg better. That I should get paid for advertising, I guess. But you can hook this up and look and see what's missing from your voice. Most of the time, what's missing from your voice is usually the sound that I will hear. Very few people have the high frequency hearing that I do to hear the sound, and people needed a way to know how to do this without me, because I can't be everywhere. So I bought this to do the sounds and to tell people what they were, and as I was doing that, I found that as they talked to me, the sounds that they had missing from their voice were the sounds that I was picking up. Most of the time, well, I've never met anybody that could do the sounds and pick them up. I have a son and a grandson that can pick up the sound because their ears are like mine, but they can't vocalize them as pure tones. And to be able to use this in any kind of abatement of disease project, you have to know exactly what the frequency is. This machine will not tell you. We should talk to Clark Kent or somebody who builds machinery and see if he can build us a machine that will do that. If you need the note of A will not show up on this machine, but we don't know what piece of the note of A. It may be 440, it may be 438, it may be 422. It'll be a shade of that note of A. And the only way that that can work specifically is that if it's on the exact frequency. Bonnie can tell you twice her husband's machine got turned off the sound that it should be on. Once when we were showing it to a dentist, and Frank came staggering in from the garage, and I thought, oh, I've killed this man. And I turned the machine back, and 3 or 4 minutes he was up and out again. And once when their grandson turned it off. So that tells me, one, it's not the charisma effect of it, and two, that it's very precise, extremely precise. Now, Frank can turn the machine off now for days at a time, and it doesn't matter. But he's been on it for 3.5 to 4 years, but he can't turn it to another frequency. And I was really concerned when this first started that he was going to be addicted to the machine, just as he was addicted to the medication we were trying to get him off of. That happened in the beginning, but now he can be away from it for more and more time. And I think it's giving his body the reprieve to heal itself. question here in the middle. Do I have anything published, and what do I use to produce the sound? This is an article that was recently submitted to a magazine. There are copies of it back there that you can get at my table. There's also an article called Breaking the Sound Barrier of Disease that shows all of this and a breakdown of how to use frequency for healing. Those have both been presented at, that one's been presented at conferences. There's one back there called The Pilot Perspective, and that's the first project we did in 1982 with the School of Nursing, Music, Hearing and Speech Sciences, and Interpersonal Communication. We felt that this nonverbal sound that you were giving off was a way to communicate, and so we did it in that particular department. But it's also back there. I have a new book coming out called Psychotypics, Bridging the Gap Between Psychic and Science, and all of it will be written up in that, and that book is also going to be broken down into chapters on how to. But this is the astrology one. I think there's about 50 copies of this back there for any of you want it, and it has the overheads in it that I used here. That answer it for you? What do I use to produce the sound? We've invented something called a SMAD, a self-management auditory device, and it creates in combination 2 to 3 different sounds depending on what people want. It hooks right into the stereo system, and it runs 24 hours a day in someone's home, and the sound is produced by mixing sounds, by mixing 2 sounds in left and right. That's as far as I can explain, because that's as far as I know. I just explained to the electrician I want it to do that, and so he built it. And we run the research projects with that. We have a lab that we work out of at the university. This is my doctoral thesis, and so we're working hard to try to see what happens with it. But I will readily admit, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of munching around and looking to see what will happen. And when I find babies, we had 2 cerebral palsy babies, and both of them were under 4 years of age. They both had the same sound missing, exactly the same frequency. If there's such a thing as a sound for cerebral palsy for young babies, wouldn't it be neat if we could give them a sound and make it go away? It doesn't work for adults with cerebral palsy. Their sounds are different. But for these 2 babies that we had, they were exacting. You had a question? She said, I mentioned something about lowering high blood pressure. Do I give a sound? This is going to be awful if I say this, but we didn't think high blood pressure was a priority. So we didn't work on it tremendously hard. We only have so many of these SMADs that we can place in people's homes because we don't charge for them or anything. High blood pressure is, I don't want to say cured, is lowered by giving you your sound, and we can lower it or raise it by as much as 32 points. That's enough to drop you dead. We do it with sound, and we do it with sub-audible frequencies. But it works. We don't know how, but it works. Peter. Peter said, what do judgments do to the physical body? You can tell Peter and I spend a lot of time together. When we put people in an environment where they were required to make a judgment, like we would give people a picture of leprosy or a grossly overweight person, because I had that real prejudice against overweight, their body frequency would change and hold the thought. For instance, with Patrick here, can I use you as an example? Okay, let's say his body frequency was 220. I'll make that up because it's a nice, easy number. We give him a picture of Uzi sores. Oh, that's not going to affect him. War. Terrible atrocities with war would affect him. The sound would change. And he'd walk away with that sound that was changed. He literally became what he judged. And he walked away with his body frequency holding that judgment. So every time you make a judgment, well, I should say that the other way. It's not for you that I don't make a judgment about you. It's for me. Because I don't want to carry it around. And when I quit making judgments about fat, I started losing weight. And I loved it. But you literally become what you judge. Every time you have a thought, by our scientific findings, your energy pattern changes, and we can measure it every time. And we can also dictate what you're going to feel a lot of the time. We can dictate what magazine you're going to pick up in our receiving room by what sound we gave you in the lab. Is that wild? You're also manipulated by commercials. The same thing happens. When I get to 3 minutes, somebody tell me, because I have some more exciting news to tell you. It's 3. I can take as long as I want. When it's over, I have to say everybody can go that wants to. The rest of us will stay here. Because of the research that we've done in the areas of psychic ability, everything from palmistry, which we now call aminimology, because we worked with the government and they didn't like the word palmistry, so we had to make up a new one. From that to proving auras existed, to knowing about psychic healing, to this new thing about astrology, to voice analysis, to how psychics work, we were able to put together a certificate program for psychics who teach, or teachers who teach about parapsychology and psychic ability. There is a certificate program available. Not that it means a whole bunch, but it's out there. And we were able to do it from my research and work, and this is my thesis on supporting a parapsychology curriculum. And this is a good argument for allowing any kind of parapsychology class that you might like. I brought 5 copies of these with me. So this is research over the last 40 years and bringing anybody up to date on fraud in parapsychology, government investigations, education. I forget the other 3, and I wrote it. Education, educators, and people who think that we're all nuts. So it's all in here, and I think it's exciting that a university actually accepted this, and we've got 5 core courses, one on research, one on doing it, any kind of psychic ability, one on ethics, one on straight introduction, and one on resources in parapsychology. So it's an exciting program to me to have parapsychology recognized as a legitimate study. Not that it wasn't before, but now people are going to listen who were too scared to listen before. And that's always been my rose-colored wish for the world, that all of us are free enough that we don't have to be scared with what our truth is. That's a good place to end, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you. We have a few more questions, so if any of you want to leave, you're free to while I answer these questions, if that's all right with Dean. Can I do that? All right. Yes? Tell them about the TV programs. We did an 8-part series for a station in Columbus, and we won all kinds of content awards for it. And we've just done, we don't have them finished. I was about to lie to you. We're in the process of doing 2 specials for PBS. One on the hand analysis, which is now in the universities and being taught to teachers. And we do need people to help us teach that. If any of you are interested, there's information back here. And one on sound. So those are in the works and should be out this summer. Somebody over there had a question, then they moved to my table. All right, no more questions? What university?